stepping so far ahead. You can launch results. It's also
Yeah, less power. Power is going to be an issue.
You never had a problem before?
No, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, the batteries, it's not, it just needs charging.
right. Yeah, see.
Did you set both clocks?
Did I set the clocks?
Did you look at the clocks on them?
What?
Time-wise, date and time.
Oh, no, I didn't. I thought I set it up when I did it, but
Maybe that's fine, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll check it at the break. But if you get the time synchronized, it makes things a lot easier. We'll figure it out.
Don Ross. It's not Don Cross.
I stole Don Ross.
He's good, I think he's on.
Right. What you can do is you can build up a whole man line. Right. Use the expression.
Yeah, SCA is not the right one to run.
Whether or not.
good. All right, so we got power there.
Yep. Yeah. The other thing that you probably want to do is you want to set it up somewhere and build a version of passwords.
Almost 20 years. This is what I did on mine. When it got imported as a SATA drive type, I started it, then I shut it down, and then I changed it to
Yeah.
Okay, we'll just have one more minute and then we'll get moving on because we have still got quite a lot to cover.
virtual, what is it called, the virtual machine edition, because it was a later version that came in. And what I got on my machine. So then I reinstalled it, so we use the ones that were current for my machine. I was having some screen resizing with this. Yeah, I'm not much. Yeah, so those are the couple. I had to start it.
He doesn't really like the very so I will always say to him, that's what's the first one come. We always say, if you need me, I'll go. But if you don't, I'm all right.
So he's kind of quiet and introverted, but he's always there. So. It's funny. It's like, no, he's been around.
Okay, has everyone got logged into Sample Manager?
Working on it. We're on the right path, Katie. We're on the right path. It's all good.
I was foolish, I shouldn't have let them go.
Well, it took like 45 minutes to convert the We'll get it. It's on the right path. We're all good.
Okay, let's get going again. It's going to be a harsh taskmaster because I know we've still got a lot to cover. So, everyone managed to get logged into Sample Manager, other than Dave.
No, and Alan, but
And Alan.
yeah.
Okay. What you got in? Did you manage to at least find where the workflows lived? Generally familiarise yourself with where they are, roughly what they look like. Joe's pulling a very pained face.
I'm good.
Good?
Thank you.
Okay. Right. So what we'll do is we will plough on a bit, and then I'll give you another exercise, which is with a bit more direction in a minute. I think just having the door open to help home is being slightly less warm in here now.
The thermostat is right there on your
No, I
left.
turned it on. It's on.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so far we've been looking at general workflows, and really we've not looked at much. We've had a select node, we've had an email node. We've also got this run command node, and that allows you to hook in and run a menu option. So you can either use the mnemonic or the menu number. So for example here, general workflows is going to do the root node. It's going to prompt this time for an operator. Last time it was hard-coded in the workflow, this is going to be Mike. This time it's going to prompt for an operator, and then it's going to run this change password option, passing in the identity of the personnel that we have selected, and then changed the password. In this case, it's going to be changed to welcome. We're going to send an email to the person, to the email address of the person that the password has changed, and we're going to put a message box up. So let's just see that live. So if I run the workflow, and I'm going to have to pick Mike because that's where I've got the email set up. So that's the internal messaging. It tells me the password's been reset, and if I go back to my email, I've got a new email. So again, this time the string has been hard-coded. The email address has been looked up based on the operator that I picked. So you can use workflows to interact at the top level, to be able to pick commands, to run pieces of Sample Manager using the run command node. And I need my PowerPoint. Okay. You can add workflows to the menu. You can add them to the master menu. So you can create a master menu item for them. Things to note are in the implementation. The server task is the workflow run task, and then the parameter is the name of the workflow you want to run. So that's how you create your master menu item for it to run a workflow. So you need the server task to be workflow run task, and the parameter you put in the name of the workflow. And then once you've done that, obviously you set up the rest of the menu item as any other menu item. You can pick where it goes into the top level menu, and then you can obviously run it that way. You can also add certain workflows into the context menu. So the difference between, so for those of you non-sample manager people, you'll still need a master menu item. You'll drag and drop it up into the top level menu as you edit your menus. The context menu is the right mouse buttons, if you like, the right mouse options that you get. So login workflows, entity workflows, and workflow actions, when we get onto them, you can add those into the context menu using the context menu tab on the workflow designer. You can pick what the menu is called. This is the text that you're going to see, log in a new job. Submenu allows you to pick where it's going to go. You can create a new string and put your new place within the menu if you want, or you can use the drop down and choose maybe to put it under login or under process, wherever. So you can pick where you're going to put it within the context menu, and you can pick an icon that's associated with it. So to add it into the context menu, you do that using this tab on the workflow designer. To add it into the top menu, you need to add a master menu item and edit the top menu as you would for any other time you want to edit it. Okay, so summary of the basics, and I know I'm going quickly. Lots of different workflows types. Generally the categories are logging in or around dynamic data, life cycles around the status transitioning, general and entities, which, oh, no, I've got entities on that list. Each workflow type has its own menu options. That's important for, can anyone remember why? Why do we want different workflow types to have their own menu options? Security, yeah. The workflow will always have a root node, which is process first. You process a node, it does its task, processes its children, and then it goes back up to the top. And then workflows can be added to the menu and the context menu. Any questions so far?
So for internationalization, we have a lot of projects where you need the exact same workflow to be bilingual, like French and English.
Yeah.
And you don't want to configure, you can't configure like French workflows and English workflows separately because in the same actual app, there's speakers of both and they need to be able to pick which language. Is it possible to do that? Like, you know how you have the text that shows up on the menu for that example you just showed?
Yeah.
And it's one text box of the name that appears? Is there any way to
localization method?
have that in different languages at the same time
For
on
the
the same
menu?
actual workflow?
Over the menu,
Yeah.
yes. So that's one of the additional features that's actually
Yeah, well,
Katie's got a bit later on.
Yeah, we'll get onto that, but you're not here
Yeah.
tomorrow. Beyond that, sorry, yes, all you need to know.
Yes, you yes, menu options.
Because I mean, in Nautilus, you can certainly have as many workflows as you want in any language you want, right? And it has full internationalization, but you can't have the same aliquot workflow, the same logs and aliquot dynamically convert of every single text in the window, be it French or English, off the same workflow nodes. I'm guessing this is probably
So
similar.
the prompts.
Yeah,
Have
there's
we
a
not got
mixture
the
of things
dollar?
that you've got there. So there's the menu options straight away when you're actually first displaying it. So
Right.
those can be localized because that's a new feature in Sample Manager 11. You can put in the menu option itself, you can put a tag that
To make
says
it
what the
different.
message box is, what the message file is, and the specific message. What I'm not sure about is whether or not for some of the prompts
Like
that you've
right mouse
got
button prompts as like an event name or that type of thing.
Oh, so the
Yeah.
right, off the context menu.
so the context menu
You
itself
can,
is, but
so-
when if you were to do a prompt in your workflow.
Right, like a message box or what have you.
Now, if you
Those are
use the form
different.
designer to do that prompt, the form designer is internationalizable. Is there a function? Yeah, I think in the expression editor itself, there's a function called localize, internationalize, something like that. And you pass it a message file and a message ID. So then you can, and all the prompts take an expression editor. So you can't, instead of just putting a bit of text in there, you can put an expression in there, and then that expression is going to look it up in the message file.
Anything else? Good. Right. I'll take silence as yes, I fully understand, and not I've got no idea what she's talking about. If it's ever a point where I don't know what she's talking about, you need to make that obvious. I assume silence is always good.
Just with the internationalization, we've got a function called get message which uses BGL of group and message name.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Events. Events are a workflow node, essentially, or a node type, and they are system-triggered, system-fired events within the system. We ship a whole load as standard, mostly, but not exclusively, mostly around status transitions. So, for example, all of my samples become available, completed, my testers have results entered. Anything that happens like that, there is a standard event that you can use. You can also add your own, we'll get onto that later. But you can hook into these events and then add your sort of logic of what you want to happen at those various points underneath. So in this example, it's a sample login workflow. I'm creating a sample. When that sample gets authorized, so I'm not going to trigger that, at some point the sample will get authorized. When it gets authorized, in this example, I'm going to generate a report and attach it as a PDF. Okay, so events, the thing to remember about events, system fired, system triggered. So I think this is just showing that in slides. Let's just, no, I haven't got time, let's go and stick on that. So I log in a sample using that workflow. When I authorize the sample, behind the scenes, the report gets generated and then gets attached. So there's this tab attachment, and I can see that the authorization report is attached to the sample that I did the work on. You can choose one of the parameters. One of the parameters of the generate report node is whether you want to preview it or not. So you can select whether it's all going to happen behind the scenes or whether it's going to happen interactively and you're going to see the report being generated. When I let you play in a minute, this example is on your VM so you can have a look at it. So, events can be found under the workflow setup, workflow event types. You've got the full set of menu options there, or you can find them within the cabinet, in the system cabinet, just underneath where workflows are. You can see these are all ones that get distributed. You can see, maybe you can't see from the back in your slides, you can see in the printouts. But as I say, they're mostly around status transitions, but there's a few about sort of job pre-create, pre-login, sample pre-login, so you can hook in at various points as well that aren't, they're not purely around status changing. You can add your own you can add new events. Generally, as I say, events are triggered by the system. So generally, you're going to, we'll come on to an example where this isn't the case, but generally, if you're creating your own event, you're probably going to plan to raise it either in some custom code that you're writing or in the workflow. You're going to have a workflow that's going to hook in and catch that. So we'll show how we can use events to do that after lunch. But for now, if you have a, you can create your own to hook into. I've already said all that. If you're triggering them from code, and again we come on to this on Thursday, so if you're hooking them in from code, then you can, there are methods of being able to call those from within the C#. So Phil will go through, and actually we've got a worked example including this, haven't we, on Thursday. Okay, so here is a pretty simple scenario. I'll walk you through it, and then I'll get you to have a go at doing it as well. So I want to log in a sample. I mean, this is kind of workflow 101. Log in a sample, and then I'm going to enter some information about that sample. And then depending on what information I enter, it's going to go away and make a decision about which tests are going to be needed. So I'm going to create a template. And my template, I'm not going to design for any test at all till I hit OK or apply. And at that point, based on what I've entered as sample type, it's going to assign a different test schedule. So this is what the workflow looks like, and I will go through it in a second. So, sample login workflow, I'm creating the sample, and I'm going to, well, optionally you don't have to, in this case I'm assigning a test. And then I've hooked into the post login event. So what that happens is when you look at the events, there's 4 around sample login. There's a pre-login, a pre-create, a post-login, and a post-create. The descriptions kind of tell you when they get fired. In this case, it's the post-login that you want. You want the one that's sort of at the end before it, the last thing it does essentially before writing that sample record to the database. It's going to go off and it's going to look at what the sample type is. And if it's plasma, I'm going to assign one test schedule. If it's blood, I'm going to assign a different test schedule. And if it's urine, a third test schedule. So I'm using a decision node, the if, and then create test will hook into an analysis, create tests will hook into a test schedule. Doesn't really matter what you do, just have some decisions and create some different tests being created. So let me just run that because it's better than looking at it in slides. So I'm going to log in. Okay. So at the moment, if I look, it's just got my pH test. If you remember my workflow, yours doesn't have to, but my workflow is always going to assign pH. And actually what I want to do is log in a few more. Just give me a second. Okay, where are we? So I want the sample type. Sample type. So if I have one as blood, one as plasma, one as urine, and one blank, at the moment, and I know I'm doing this quick, you can have a go at this yourselves in a minute. Got my 4 samples, each of them at the moment have only got the pH test. Sample 1, pH, etc., etc. When I hit apply, I've got a message box because I had one that we didn't know what it was. I didn't fill it in. And if we look now, if we go through sample by sample, they've all still got their pH, but as we come down, they've got different tests that have been assigned. And the last one, which didn't have a known sample type, has still just got its pH. So I hooked into that a node to decide that I wanted to, based on logic, based on what I entered in sample type as I was logging it in, and then make decisions based on that. If we just have a very quick look at the workflow, and then you can go play.